Good evening. Thank you for joining us here tonight for St. Ambrose Academy's virtual open house. My name is Angela Hineline, and I will be the host for tonight's event. I wear a few hats at St. Ambrose: Director of Enrollment, Musical Director, Learning Services Specialist. But I'm also a very proud parent of two St. Ambrose alumni and a current 7th grader. I'll share a little bit more about me and my role at St. Ambrose Academy later on in our program. Tonight, during our virtual open house, we'd like to showcase the 3 C's that make up our identity as a school. First, we are Catholic. Christ really is everything to us. We are classical. Our students are trained in the trivium and move through the 3 stages: grammar, logic, and rhetoric. And we are close-knit. When you enter the doors of St. Ambrose, you really do enter a community. There is an incredible family feel here that you just can't miss. We plan to showcase these 3 C's in a conversational way with a few of our deans and faculty who shape our school administratively and lead our classrooms day to day. We'll also hear from a current St. Ambrose senior, a young woman who has a bright future ahead of her and who can speak to the experience of coming into St. Ambrose as a freshman and how this education has impacted her life both now and going forward. Now I'd like to provide you some quick background information on who we are. St. Ambrose Academy was founded in 2003. Since then, our school has grown consistently year to year as we continue to assist parents in the formation of their children by providing a classical education rooted in the Catholic faith. We are proud of our growth and have never compromised on our firm commitment to provide a robust tuition assistance program. Our tuition assistance program is supported by many generous benefactors that allows families of all backgrounds to seek this education for their children. Our growth has led us to the point where we are now in the middle of the Christ Our Light building campaign to build a beautiful permanent home in a development in Fitchburg, Wisconsin. This ongoing building campaign is exciting and a testament to the continued generosity of the community who believe in the fundamental importance of educating students in the Catholic tradition. Much more information will be shared in the coming weeks and months, but if you're interested in supporting this building campaign, I encourage you to visit ambroseacademy.org. And if you are looking into St. Ambrose for your children, would like to set up an in-person visit or shadow day, have questions about tuition assistance, academics, or anything at all, I encourage you to email info@ambroseacademy.org, so we can connect. Now, let's get into our program for tonight. I am going to be introducing some of our faculty to you, but we want to hear your questions about our school. So at any point, if you have questions, go ahead and type it into the chat. Our coordinator for tonight's event, Carolyn, she's in another room next door. She's going to let me know about your questions as they come up, and we'll work them right into our program. Now, first up, when people say classical education, what do they mean? Here to share more about our classical identity is Dr. Constance Nielsen, our Director of Classical Education, who teaches English, grammar, and religion. All right. Connie, I would like you to tell us, first of all, a little bit about yourself and how you came to know St. Ambrose Academy.
Oh, well, that is a long story. I've been with St. Ambrose Academy since the very beginning. When they contacted me in the middle of the year, I was working on my dissertation at Marquette, and I got a call asking if I'd come and teach some classes for them at St. Ambrose. And that was 2000, over so many years ago. And I've been a part of St. Ambrose in one fashion or another ever since.
One of the biggest questions that I know you hear a lot, and I hear a lot too, is, what is classical education? So could you talk a little bit about that for those who are completely unfamiliar with that type of education, with that terminology?
Right. Well, you hit it on the head in your introduction when you said it's all about assisting parents in the formation of their children. Right? We don't have a lot of time to go into the details of classical education tonight, and we have a lot of information on our website about classical education and what that means. But in a nutshell, I would say the difference is that we are not interested only in teaching students facts and figures and things to memorize and put on a test, right? We don't do multiple choice. Usually, we don't just want them to know things. We want to form them and form their intellects and teach them how to think. And so everything that we do, even though, of course, you need to learn content, you need to memorize things, you need to know stuff, everything we do also comes with, how is this forming this child? How is this helping this child how to think better and how to understand the world better? How is it teaching them to ask the important questions? How will this make them become the person that God wants them to be? And not just how will they remember these facts on a test in 3 days? So it's really about formation. And so it reaches every child, because in our school, every teacher looks at each student as a unique person, and what is it that this child needs, and how can I bring this child to their full potential? But as you said, assisting parents, because we understand as Catholic educators that parents are the primary educators of their children. And so we work with the parents, respecting also what their goals for their child are, and trying to partner with them in bringing out the best in every student that we have. That's, in a nutshell, what classical education is.
Well, you were talking about how, we're teaching students to think, and part of that is helping them understand the cycle, sort of the cycles of the world, and how, information that we should know about, right? How it works together. And so at St. Ambrose, we have kind of a cyclical way in which we educate our students that flows through many aspects of our curriculum. And I'd love for you to talk a little bit about those cycles and how and why they're repeated. They're introduced in junior high, and then they're expounded upon in high school. So if you could tell us a little bit about that, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, for sure. The 4-cycle curriculum in the high school is one of my favorite things about St. Ambrose Academy. And it's not necessarily integral to classical education. It was just part of the genius of the people who founded St. Ambrose Academy. When I talk to other classical educators, when I talk to public educators, when I explain the cycle system to them, they always say, oh, that sounds great. I love that. So in the high school, the 4 cycles there are 4 years of curriculum divided by historical eras. So ancient, medieval, and then we have a year of American, and then Enlightenment and modern. And in each one of those years, the humanities are all focused on that time period. So in cycle 1, which is ancient, they do ancient literature, and they do ancient Greek and Roman history, and they do the early church, which is the church born within this ancient world. And so they see the connections between all of the different disciplines, and then they see the progress of the big questions. Who are we? Where did we come from? Where are we going? What is our purpose? And they see these big questions as they're answered over the course of history. And they see how the church is stably a part of answering that question in Christ, you know, culture after culture and era after era. The way that works with the junior high, and the reason we repeat it, is because the junior high students are in the grammar stage. And so they're just about absorbing information at that time. And, you know, they have great creativity and ideas, but they're just sponges for information. And so they get all that information at their level. And then by the time they get to the high school and we start asking the deeper questions, they already know the stuff. They know who Constantine is and who St. Augustine is and who de Tocqueville is, and they know these things. And now they can ask the deeper questions that an older intellect is ready to answer. And so the high school teacher doesn't have to worry about that, and they can just dive right in.
That's
a
awesome.
lot of fun.
That's awesome. When you think about our curriculum, what do you think makes it the kind of curriculum that really prepares students for whatever calling God has for them? What is it about what we're doing here that makes that possible?
Well, two things I would answer to that. I mean, one, of course, is the culture and not the curriculum, right? One is a culture of understanding that we exist within God's plan, and we're all together in this project as a community, and that we want to try to glorify God with whatever gifts he's given us and whatever talents he's put at our disposal, right? So primarily it's the culture that forms that. But also the project of trying to teach students how to think for themselves and do the work for themselves. We have this goal that Mr. Quas, who's going to talk later, came up with for us, which is the 80-20. And in any class, you want the students to be talking 80% of the time and the teacher to only be talking 20% of the time. Because our goal is to just guide them and bring it out of them. So they're really doing the work. We're just leading them. And so if a child learns how to think that way and think of themselves as the person who's driving the train, then when they find what their job is, they're ready to drive that train. And if they encounter a problem, then they think, well, it's on me to figure out how to solve this problem and to do this well. They don't think, well, I have to sit back here and wait for someone to tell me what to do. They think, okay, here I am, this is what's going on, and I've been trained how to go for it and figure it out. And so whatever it is.
And that leads me to the kind of the last thing that I wanted to ask you about and have you share. What is the Ambrose advantage? What is that?
I think the Ambrose advantage, I mean, it is as many children as we have ever educated in the years we have been open, because it's different for every child. We're trying to bring out each unique individual person's potential. And so the advantage is whatever that child needs that we are able to offer to them. It's a personalized approach that hopefully will bring out the best in every student.
Thank you, Connie. Thank you very much. Thank you for all that you do for our school and for the students. It's, I hope that, I know that people that are watching and listening are just going to hear your passion and how excited you are to lead our school in this classical model, which is really, it's all about teaching them how to learn what they need to learn to do that work that God has for them in the future. Michael, I wanted to now take some time to introduce our Dean of Academic Success, Mr. Michael Quass. He's also a history teacher here at St. Ambrose Academy. And I wanted to now take some time to allow Michael to introduce himself to you. And I love this question about, how did you find St. Ambrose? What brought you here? But as a historian, after you tell us a little bit about you, what drew you to this school? So could you tell us about that, Mr. Quass?
Oh, sure. So I'm in my 8th year of teaching now at St. Ambrose, and I started part-time while I was teaching at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. And for some reason, I had always wanted to teach in a Catholic school. I don't know why. I wasn't in the, at that time, in the School of Education. And it was really just fortuitous that I kind of fell into St. Ambrose. My spiritual director at that time, Father Eric Nielsen, is the brother of Connie Nielsen. So he says, "Oh, you have to talk to my sister." And sure enough, I did. And she said, she asked me to come volunteer as a tutor, and I did. And I just loved the energy there. I loved the joy in the hallways, in the classrooms. And I thought, this is a really cool place where they just love learning. And especially the faculty had a thirst for learning. And so that's what drew me and my 2 sons to the school. I have two sons. One is now a graduate of St. Ambrose, who's now at the University of Wisconsin-Madison as a sophomore, and the other is a senior now at St. Ambrose. So a little bit of a family affair. So
one of the things that I've really enjoyed about getting to know you, Michael, is hearing you talk about, as head of our history department, about your desire to teach the students to think like a historian. What does that mean?
Well, it means that students are approaching history with a set of questions. So it's inquiry-based education. So I and my colleagues in the other historians, the other history teachers, we all equip the students to approach their texts, primary texts, sources from the time, or secondary texts, what historians have written about the time, with a set of questions. And these questions vary across different age levels, but we think of it as either as someone wearing 3 hats, or maybe a 3-headed hydra, I don't know. But the first is students are approaching history as a detective. This is especially important in the junior high. So they're asking the detective or the journalist questions. Who's associated with this? When does it occur? Where does it occur? What are we talking about, right? Is this an event? Is this a process, right? What sort of person is this? How did this happen? And why should we care? The second set of questions a student might ask, especially as they get older, we can think about maybe a little bit more in a scientific sense. So these are typically questions of causality. So simply put, what were the causes and what were the effects of an event? What were the, what led an important historical figure to do what he or she did, and what were the consequences of that? What changed, and also what remained the same? And so thinking about change in those terms are really really important, especially in the 8th grade and as the 8th graders enter high school in their freshman and sophomore years. And then lastly, the set of questions in terms of thinking like a historian, I often think of as maybe wearing your theologian's hat. So you're asking questions of value. You're asking questions, as Connie mentioned just a moment ago, about the big questions, such as who are we? What is our place here? How has the church guided us through these times? And so those are questions of meaning. And so we spend a lot of time preparing our junior high school students to be able to address those questions when they enter or when they enter the more advanced levels in high school, because our hope is then when they leave St. Ambrose and they enter the larger world, that they'll be well equipped to encounter our very complex modern world.
Well, speaking about entering kind of like next level of education, my 2 alumni, they have reflected on their experience at St. Ambrose, and they told me many times, I'm so grateful to Mr. Quas and those research papers and how he taught us to write research papers. And I really would love for you to talk about that, because to have two different kids give you high praise when they were in college and to say how valuable it was once they got there. You spent a lot of time in high school walking our students through that process. And I think it's really awesome how you walk them through it, how to use primary sources. Can you tell us a little bit about that and what you see students gaining from the process that you take them through?
Sure. I think that the most important part of that is it introduces students to the process of actually doing history. And we do a little bit of that as early as 6th grade. So students will do some individual projects, right? They'll have some freedom to choose a topic of their choice and to do a little bit of research. And when they get to their junior and senior year, then they're going to do research that is written. So instead of doing, say, a poster project or an exhibition, they're going to do a 2,500, 3,000 word research paper. And so the process is about half of the time is spent researching, but thinking about these questions, right? Thinking what are the important questions I need to ask about my topic? What are the complexities of my topic? What are some of the limits to my sources? And then trying to craft that research that they've been doing for their entire time, really, at St. Ambrose, but now they're doing it much more independently. But trying to craft that research into a narrative that makes an argument about history, that presents a claim that's defended with evidence. So in other words, introduces a thesis. And so that is our goal, especially when we think about teaching the students to think independently. It's to encounter problems, and in this instance, problems of interpretation with regard to history, and to say, this is why I think my interpretation is the correct one. And to make that argument, to actually do history, to get down and dirty with the sources and work through the sources and figure out which ones they're going to use and which ones they're not going to use, and then to have to put that through multiple revisions, exactly what professional historians do.
That's awesome. Do you have a favorite I know you do, but maybe you don't. You probably have many. But what's your favorite historical period? I mean, what are you most passionate about teaching, or what do you get the most excited about when it comes up in the cycles? And tell us about that.
Yeah, I at the at the risk of equivocating, it's really in many ways wherever we're at right now. So but no, I would say I'm particularly interested in the late 19th and early 20th century. I think that's when most of the Western world, at least, encounters the modern world and encounters a profound change that that people grapple with in very unexpected and heroic, but at the same time foolhardy ways. I find that period to be so incredibly rich, and I learned so much about I think ourselves today in the 21st century, but also about myself too. So really that time period between roughly, I don't know, the post-Civil War 1870s through the 1920s. I choose the 1920s because that's the decade I think most where the world, at least the Western world, most resembles our own, right? There's refrigerators and there's telephones and cars, right? I think we could take one of our students and put them into the 1920s and they would feel somewhat at home, but putting them in the 1880s now, that would seem like a really alien world to them.
Well, thank you, Michael.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. It's always fun to talk with you about history. It's really fun. And I'm just going to let people know, make an in-person visit to our school, because it is a delight to sit in one of Michael Quas's history classes at any level. You're teaching what grades in history? Can you just say that briefly?
Yes. So the 8th grade, where we're studying the history of the church, long history, and 11th and 12th grade, where we're studying the modern world. And I should add, I also have been told I'm qualified to teach 6th grade science. So I also teach earth science, or as it was known at one point, natural history, for the 6th graders. And we have a ball. We really do. We really have a ball.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. Now I'm going to say goodbye to you, but we're going to bring Patrick Carey into our I'm going to call it the teacher lounge conversation. And we're adding a student here to that today. But Patrick, he's joining us tonight. And Patrick is one of our math and science faculty members who has some really helpful insights about the place of STEM fields in a classical education. So Patrick, I would love for you to just share a little bit about your career background and how you first became a part of this St. Ambrose community.
Well, hello, Angela, and hello, everyone else who's watching. Connie said she was here at the beginning. I guess I would have to say I was here before the beginning, before there was a St. Ambrose, and we were discussing starting the school, and that crazy idea. The first year we had, on the first day, I think we had 10 students on the first day. By the end of the day, we had 9. And so I was there at the beginning. I've had 6 kids go through St. Ambrose, and those 6 kids, 4 of them are graduated in what we call STEM fields. One is a business major, another one is a communications major. So I was able to see how St. Ambrose prepared them for STEM subjects in college. I started teaching part-time, just as a volunteer teacher. I think back in 2005. And so since then, just about every year I've taught 1 or 2 classes. I've taught math classes ranging from pre-algebra through calculus 2, and also I've taught physics. So I've had a chance to see students at different levels and see how the school works. And I just have to say that the faculty is just outstanding for STEM. The people we have teaching chemistry and biology are just wonderful. So for me, it's been a wonderful experience. And I've hoped, not just in terms of teaching, but also just in the quality of the students and the families who are involved with the school. It's just been terrific. And so for me, doing a volunteer teaching for so many years, I got paid by that experience from being with those kids. Now, in terms of the STEM subjects, I think we do a great disservice by putting STEM into a different category of the human experience. And I think part of that is a lot of things happening with STEM seem to be focused on making someone prepared for the job market, for getting high paying jobs. And our philosophy at St. Ambrose is to think of the sciences and the math as part of the development of the whole human person, that these are not separate. What I would do in math, what Dr. Monahan would do in chemistry is not that much different from what Connie is doing in classical education or what Mr. Quas is doing in history. It's all part of developing a whole human person that is comfortable in different areas and is able to express all those intellectual gifts that God gives us. Yes, we do talk about STEM in terms of colleges and making yourself ready for a job market and perhaps making a good salary, but I don't want to limit STEM to just that type of interpretation.
I love that you're talking about how, math and science, history, English, we'll talk about Latin later, religion, it's all about preparing the whole person. It's an important part. They're all integral parts of one's education. Are there particular aspects of our science and math program that you just on your own are particularly proud of, that you feel really stand out and you think have been the kinds of things that have done a great job of
Well, I think we've done a pretty good job
some of your student children that have gone.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I think we've done a good job in preparing kids for college. I think when they get into college and they're going into fields involving engineering or science or math, they have a real good background in understanding how to work very hard and how to read texts. One example that comes to mind is my son Stephen, who graduated just last year. He had a triple major. It was in physics and math and computer science. But he also, from St. Ambrose, had a very good knowledge of Thomas Aquinas. And I think if you read Thomas Aquinas and can interpret it and understand it, that doesn't sound like a STEM subject. But the type of gifts that come from being able to do an analysis of Thomas Aquinas is also going to help you do an analysis of a scientific paper or reading a scientific journal. And he had a discussion once with someone who made some claim about what Thomas Aquinas once said. And Stephen, my son, said, well, I'm not sure that's correct. Let's actually look at the original text. And so they got the original text and he kind of went through it with her. But okay, so that's theology, but it's also involving logic and rhetoric. And a good scientist, a good mathematician also has to use those skills as well. So I think that the whole academic career of my children at St. Ambrose and other students at St. Ambrose not just in the science classes, in the math classes, also prepared them. Because the other thing is sometimes when we think about science, we think about lab equipment, we think about labs. Now we do labs and we have lab equipment, but the most important equipment for anyone going into a STEM field is not what they find in the lab, it's what's between their ears, the development of their mind. That's the most important equipment for any success in that field. And I'm very proud of how we have helped our students to develop that piece of equipment.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much, Patrick. And thank you for everything that you've done to be a part of founding our school. Now I'd like to introduce you to Dr. Mary Scamp. She is our Dean of Students and an English and Latin teacher. And Mary, it's pretty exciting because we've already got 7 questions when we're done doing our little interviews that we get to go and answer. So for those of you that are sending us questions, yay, this is going to be a fun discussion in a little bit. We appreciate that. Now, Mary, love to know a little bit about you. And then I would just love for you to talk, just kind of dive right into our English program and what you view as the real strengths of our English program here at St. Ambrose, after you introduce yourself and how you found your way here to our school.
Sure. Yeah. Hi, everyone. I am in my 4th year at St. Ambrose and loving it. St. Ambrose was an answer to a prayer for me. My first profession was actually teaching French at the university level. I taught French language and literature for 20 years. When my family moved to Madison in 2007, I started teaching part-time, and I had 2 small children. My children were small at the time. And so it was a blessing to be able to teach part-time and have time to dedicate to my kids at the same time. But when they got a little older, I was looking for something more full-time. And so I started praying and even called in the heavy hitters. I contacted the Franciscan Sisters of Perpetual Adoration out of La Crosse and asked them to pray for me. And out of that, I got a job at the Catholic Herald, of all places, and I was there for 1.5 years, and that's where I met Grant Emmel, who's a board member and a parent also of a St. Ambrose student. And we were both teaching part-time at MATC and talked a lot about teaching. And I said to him one day, you know what I'd really like to do, Grant, is just, I'd be really happy if I could find a job to teach full-time. And he said, well, maybe I can help you with that. So he introduced me to Connie, and as an answer to my prayers, here I am at St. Ambrose. So that's how I got here. And yeah, I've been teaching English at the high school level. Let's see, what is the strength of our English program? I think that the strength of our English program is that we use primary texts. We introduce the students at a, right away freshman year to very challenging and very rich literature. We read it along with them. We read it closely. We discuss it with lots of energy. And it's really fun to see the kids engage very enthusiastically in some very difficult texts. So if they start in cycle 1, they're starting with the Iliad, for example. And if they start in cycle 2, they start with Beowulf as freshmen. And it's great to, we have some wonderful translations, and it's really wonderful to introduce this really rich literature to these kids and to watch them enjoy it and discover.
I think one of the things that you
discover that they're very capable of reading this. Yeah.
And I think one of the things that's really incredible about the classical approach, and you said it several times, but you teach them how to read Beowulf, right? And so how does that happen in your classroom? Because some people, the first time you open up Beowulf, even a great translation like we have, and sometimes you feel a little bit nervous about that, but you take care of that problem because what do you do in the classroom?
Well, usually when we start a book like Beowulf, let's say, we will start reading the book together in the classroom. And I often read to the students and they seem to enjoy that. But as we're reading, we'll stop and we'll take a look at it because we're interested in a number of aspects of it, right? We want to understand where the literature is coming from, out of what cultural context it's coming from. But we also want to understand the art of the literature. And so we discuss those things. We'll, read a little bit and then, kind of take it apart and see what it's telling us about the cultural context that it came out of and how the author artistically wove the text together. And so we can do that as we're reading through the text. And then usually at some point I say, okay, now you've got to go home and read some of this yourself. And then, and they're able to do that and they do it with confidence, or they just come to class with questions and we discuss their questions. So, yeah.
Do you have a favorite piece of literature that every year or every cycle you just really look forward to bringing to a group of students?
Oh, there's so many. It's one of the wonderful things about diving into teaching literature here at St. Ambrose. The curriculum is so just full of wonderful pieces, and every time I read them again, I think, oh, this is just such a gift to me, as a teacher, and a gift to the students too. Right now, and again, I think that, like Michael said, my favorite is always the one that we're right in the middle of and that we're discussing and the kids are enjoying. So right now, with the freshmen and sophomores, I'm reading Dante's Inferno. And that, of course, is, just a wonderful story. And the kids are right along with it. Dante writes himself into his narrative as, being in a moral crisis at the beginning of this journey that he is going to go on. And the students are really compassionate about this character and really feel for him. And they see the fear and they see the anxiety, that he expresses in his poetry, which is, of course, part of the point of what he's trying to do. He's trying to draw them all into the emotions that he's going through in this journey of his. At the same time, we look at the structure of the text and how Dante, the author, created this Trinitarian text, right? These three books, each one divided into 33 chapters, 33 cantos, and each canto is constructed along these 3-line stanzas that are interwoven by the three lines that rhyme. So it's all 3, 3, 3, and so the crisis that this character Dante is going through is all happening within this wonderful Trinitarian structure, all within the embrace of God. And one of the advantages of teaching at St. Ambrose is that the kids get this right away, right? They understand what that means to be embraced by a loving God, even within this, these moments of depression and anxiety that we all go through. So I love teaching the Inferno.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. Hey, I know that you also, and we only have a little bit of time to talk about this, but we could talk about it for a long time, is Latin. You're one of our Latin teachers. And why Latin? It's a question that as director of enrollment, I get quite a bit, that Latin question.
Sure.
Why do we teach Latin? Why is it valuable? And how does it prepare students for the future?
Well, at St. Ambrose, Latin is very much at home, very comfortable, since it's the language of the church, right? And many of the students are very familiar with prayers in Latin because they share prayers with their families in that way. And so it's just very organic the way it is used in the school. So why do we teach it? Well, we teach it because it is the language that so many important texts in our classical and Catholic tradition come from. But we also teach it because it is good exercise for the brain. It is a real discipline, and it really does build a how can I say it? It builds brain cells, right? The inflected languages are a challenge. I don't know if you're familiar with how that works, but the syntax is not so important in Latin because each one of the nouns, the part of speech that it represents, it depends on the ending that's put on it. So the students have to really have a good mastery of grammar, really good understanding of how each part of speech functions in the sentence in order to master grammar and master Latin. And once they have that, they have a really strong understanding of how languages work in general. And Latin is an excellent foundation for learning other languages. So if any of them want to go on at the university level to take up any modern languages, they're well prepared for it with the Latin that they've had. Yeah, so there are a lot of other reasons, there's studies that show correlation between Latin study and high ACT and SAT scores. Students who are familiar with Latin are able to kind of decipher unfamiliar words because there are so many Latin roots in the English language. Latin really is the language of many disciplines, medicine and law and biology. There's so much vocabulary that comes from Latin in those disciplines. So yeah, Latin is a very important language, still remains important today.
Well, thank you very much, Mary, for sharing about your English classes, talking a little bit about Latin. And now we're going to go to our senior in high school. Claire is here with us today to give us a student perspective about what it is like to transfer from a completely different school into a school like St. Ambrose Academy. And Claire, this is your senior year. You've been with us now 4 years. You've got a lot of good experience of being an Ambrosian. So tell us, what was it like for you to transfer to St. Ambrose Academy as a freshman in high school?
Yeah, transferring to St. Ambrose my freshman year, I'm going to be honest, it was very challenging. I wasn't used to the academic rigor that is required of the St. Ambrose students. And I remember my freshman orientation day, I came in and I read through the introduction to the Iliad with Dr. Nielsen, and I got through it and I was like, what did I get myself into? I understood none of that, like 0%. But by the end of like the 30-45 minutes that I spent going through the introduction with Dr. Nielsen, I was like, okay, like I think I can do this. I think I can read chapter 1 and I'll be okay. And so just like working with the teachers and working with the students and learning great time management skills. Now I love the curriculum at St. Ambrose. I love the courses. I love the cycles. And I feel like I really thrive because I've learned that time management college won't be easy by any means, but I feel as prepared as I can be to accept that challenge.
Well, that's awesome. Talk about what you've really enjoyed about being a student at St. Ambrose. What is the best part about being a student here?
Yeah, one of my favorite things is just knowing everyone that you go to school with. And so you walk down the halls and you know who you're passing, you know if they have a test next period and you can wish them luck. And just being able to work with people of all different types, because in such a small school, you don't necessarily get to choose who you're paired with, who you hang out with, who you're learning with. And so you learn to work with all different personality types. And then also being able to include our faith in our classes. It's so cool to have a biology class where today biology is used a lot against the Catholic faith, and yet we go in and our teacher, Dr. Monahan is my biology teacher this year, and he's like, isn't this so great? Like just all the complexity, it makes us in awe of God and all that he's created. And then finally is just my academic abilities. I'm so much more confident in just myself as a person and as a student. Making arguments, as simple as it sounds, was a lot more difficult for me my freshman year, but now I feel confident reading a text and being able to argue a point and find the evidence to back it up.
Well, thank you. And you have a very active extracurricular life. So, I mean, you're definitely that student in the classroom during the day, but there's plenty to be involved in outside of outside of the classroom day with extracurriculars. And I'd love for you to talk a little bit about what you've been involved with at St. Ambrose.
Yeah, so the first extracurricular I joined was volleyball. I actually decided I was going to St. Ambrose the day before practice started. And that was such a good experience, because if I would have gone to the public school in my hometown, I probably wouldn't have tried out for volleyball just because I hadn't played a ton before. But being a smaller school, I was convinced to try out for the team, and I met some of my best friends. And we co-op with Abundant Life Christian School. And so even though we go to a really small school at St. Ambrose, I was able to meet other students from Abundant Life, and it kind of just opens up your area to make friends and to find people that you can relate with. And then also I play soccer, and we co-op with Madison Country Day School and Abundant Life, and so you meet more students there. And then last year I decided I was going to audition for the musical with no musical experience at all, and it's been so much fun. And we finally get to perform Singing in the Rain at the end of March after a year and a half of working on it, so I'm excited.
Oh, and I have to give you a little shout out, because Claire, who had never tap danced ever before, is a brilliant tap dancer now. So it's very fun to hear you talk about the benefits of being in a small school where, you know what, you can just try things and then suddenly discover, hey, I'm pretty good at this. And I think that I've heard that you're quite an excellent volleyball player for somebody who'd never tried it before. So Claire, what are you thinking about after high school? Any majors that you're thinking about or anything like that?
Yeah, right now I plan to major in biomedical engineering. I know that might change once I start taking classes, but I always thought that I'd be a doctor of some sort. And then I took physics last year, and I had kind of the realization that I loved physics, and I love my calculus and calculus 2 classes, and that's like where I thrive most. And I found biomedical engineering over the summer and realized that was the perfect mix of all of my passions. Not sure where I'm going yet, but yeah, biomedical engineering is the plan right now.
Well, I think it's really interesting, Claire, because you said when you first walked in the door and you sat down for the intro with Dr. Nielsen, you were scared, right?
Oh, yes.
And,
yes.
and clearly, right? You learned and were able to see that there were so many things that you could do, right? And one of the things that I would like to do now as a segue from listening to Claire's story is talk about my role a little bit, which is our learning services specialist. It's one of the roles that I have here at St. Ambrose, but it's one of the roles that I really love the most. And as the learning specialist, I actively work with our faculty and our teachers to set our students up for learning success. And so one of the things that we know is that children come into our school from all different kinds of schools, from all different backgrounds. And our goal is to provide everyone with a place where they can learn. And one of the things that works very well here is the collaboration. And I think I'm going to see some nods in a little bit, the collaboration that happens amongst the faculty, where we all work together to figure out what we can do as a team to set each student up for success. We heard from one student, but we have many. Sometimes that looks like what happens in with me, where there's one-on-one tutoring or small group tutoring. We also have a relationship with the Learning Atrium, and the Learning Atrium provides tutoring and support for students with dyslexia. But learning support does not begin and end with learning services in our learning services department. It's actually a part of what every single faculty member does every single day. And I think one of the things that brings me great joy is walking down the hallways during an advisory period or during student study hall periods and seeing faculty members sitting beside students, going through homework, providing study groups, helping students make corrections on their essays, And so one of the things that we really work on here, right, I see Michael Clausen nodding his head, is really thinking about what we can do to set each child up for success, because all of these kiddos that are in our school, everybody's different, everybody's unique, right? And so how we work together to create this atmosphere where learning can happen for everyone. With that said, we are getting to the point where I want to take your questions. But right before I do that, I also want to just briefly highlight a program called our Ambassador Program. And it's a program that Michael Klaus, he's nodding his head over here on Zoom as well, but it's something that he created. And our Ambassador Program is designed to help new students transition into our school. To transition into our community. So when we have new students come into our school, we pair them with trained student mentors who will be there to help them build friendships and really learn the ropes here at St. Ambrose Academy. And so as we're talking about these different content areas within our school, we also want you to know that we have different services and supports available to help individual students succeed, especially that new student that is coming into our school. We spend a lot of time working to get to know them and working to set them up for success. And now, hey gang, we have 14 questions. Wow, I'm going to open this up and see what we have here. Okay, and I will try to figure out who we're going to address these questions to, but here's one. It says, I love the small school atmosphere, but I also have hopes for the future growth of the school. How will you keep the positives of small school as the student body grows in years ahead? Wow, that is a great question. Connie, did you hear that one? Okay, all right. So can you and I just talk briefly about that question? How do we keep the positives of a small school in our school as our enrollment grows? How are we gonna work to hang on to that? What are your thoughts on that, Connie?
Yes, I think about that question a lot. I think a lot about all these different cultural customs that we have and how they will endure. And you see in a school how a culture, even though people are coming through, like we're going to lose Claire, and I don't know what we'll do when Claire is gone. But Claire is working now to establish and maintain the culture that has been built. And the classes that follow will seek and hopefully maintain the culture that we have built. And so if you have a culture that's focused on the good of the individual person, then you will be able to always maintain that focus. As our class sizes get bigger, we'll split them up. We'll hopefully have 2 9th grades and 2 10th grades, because we don't want the classes to ever get so big that we can't have that focus on the individual person. It's part of our mission to be able to do that. And so we will always be thinking at the board level, at the faculty level, how to make sure we can still see the individual child and not just have a mass of people that are just a herd.
I think that one of the things that you just said, and I'll just reiterate it briefly, is it's this idea that in order to feel the love of God, we need to feel seen, right? And so as a community, as a faculty, making sure that each one of those kiddos, each child is seen and feels really a part of that community. And so we will, those traditions, the prayer, those are things that we will continue to emphasize, right, Connie? To keep that culture alive, so that that same great experience that Claire had in this small school of 114, is there when we grow larger. Here's another question, And it's asking about an entrance exam. It says, I heard that there is a preliminary exam for math prior to 6th grade. What are the implications of those results? And how do scores affect the ability to attend St. Ambrose? Do students who excel in a subject have an opportunity to advance to a higher level if they wish to? That might be a question that I could ask Michael Quass. Would you like to take that question and take a stab at answering that one? Or maybe Connie too.
Yeah, let's also involve Dr. Nielsen
Okay.
on this one. So there are entrance exams which serve to tell us where a student is at, so that in many ways they're diagnostic. They tell us whether or not that student will need assistance to succeed at St. Ambrose Academy, and it'll also tell us whether or not maybe a student is, say, in a course like mathematics or Latin, if they can be placed on an accelerated track. And Dr. Nielsen, would you like to add anything to that?
Well, I would just reiterate what you said, Michael. It's really more diagnostic. We have some subjects that, like grammar or Latin or math, that are scaffolded, and we just want to make sure we know where this child is best placed in order to make a smooth transition to the next level, but also get to the highest level that they can get to. And in the humanities, it's good to know if a child needs extra challenges beyond the norm, or if they're going to need extra supports beyond what the regular classroom experience is. So it's really more about a diagnostic tool, like Mr. Quass said.
And both of those things are okay. Both of those things are okay. One of the next question here is, Dr. Scamp, this might be one we can toss at you. And Claire, how are you doing on time?
I'm good.
Okay, good. I just want to make sure it's starting to get a little bit later. So, all right, thank you. Okay, so what I'm going to do, there's a question about Latin. And it talks about Latin and entering high school in Latin, and if there's anything remedial. So let's kind of talk a little bit about Latin. It says for entering in grade 9, would there be an opportunity for remedial Latin classes? And maybe Dr. Scamp, you can talk about if you haven't had any Latin prior to St. Ambrose, why that's okay.
Yeah, so we don't expect every student coming into the high school to have had Latin. And so we offer Latin 1 every year. And so we have a mix in that group generally of our new students, whether they're coming in as freshmen or whether they're coming in at an upper grade. It's usually a smaller class. And so it's actually a very nice class. You get a lot of individual attention from the teacher. It is true that we offer Latin starting in 7th grade. So those students who do Latin in 7th and 8th grade will have done the equivalent of Latin 1 by the time they reach high school, and then they start in Latin 2 when they get into high school. So, so it is not a problem to come to St. Ambrose without having had any Latin. We have a student who started with us his junior year this year, and he's starting in Latin 1 and will do his 2 years of required Latin in his junior and senior year, and that works just fine.
Here's another question. Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Scamp. As a Catholic school, do you have any ways that you protect against what you might call the mainstream pressure to be overly involved in everything? Or basically, how do you foster balance in students' lives? We may be unique, but coming from homeschooling, we have some concern about losing family life to homework, clubs, sports, extracurriculars, etc. Dr. Nielsen, do you want to talk about that one? I can talk about it as a mom too, and also a teacher, but I think you have some neat insights on that as well. Do you want to talk?
We help balance extracurriculars by giving them lots of homework. No. Just kidding. The extracurricular question is really a parent-driven question. There's not, I mean, we are excited about our students to get involved in other things, but there's not a lot of pressure to be in this and this and this and this. It's really a parent and student-driven decision. We have a lot of opportunities for the kids, but it's up to mom and dad and the student what they want to do. Plus, we also prioritize family time by giving, you know, we had Ash Wednesday off. Most Catholic schools don't even have Ash Wednesday off because we want that to be a family day. We have a lot, our holy days, we have extended Easter and Christmas breaks. We are always trying to respect the priority of family time over the school community. We want to build a good community here, but the family has priority over that. So you can speak now to that too, Ange.
Yeah, and I lead one of the extracurriculars. I think that one of the things Connie talked about is being very aware of days that are like set aside for family life, for God. And Sunday is a day that is for, you know, it's for family, it's for God, it's that day of rest. But I agree with exactly what Connie says. I've had 2 children graduate from St. Ambrose and then a 7th grader here. And we love extracurriculars, but we all know that each child needs to work with their parents to determine what that balance looks like. We definitely respect that. So, all right. Lots of great questions here. Do you have students that come from diocesan K through 8 schools and can they start in either 6th or 9th grade? I think there's a really easy answer to that one, and that is that we do have students that come from those schools, and you can transition, and in 6th grade, you can transition in 9th grade. Sometimes we have students that come in 7th or 8th grade, and we have all of the supports that are necessary to make sure that a child has a nice transition with whichever entry point that they have. Would anyone else want to add anything more about that? Okay. Okay. It says, I am curious as to what a typical day looks like. How many classes? How long in each class? Does each grade stay together? All right. Who would like to answer that one?
Hey, Claire, answer that one.
Okay, Claire, that's a good one for you.
Okay, so normally you take 6 classes a semester. This year I'm taking 7, so my Monday, Wednesday, we do a block schedule, so it's every other day. And so on my Mondays, I have 4 classes back to back, which is a lot, but normally there's like 3 in a study hall or 3 and either music, gym, or art. And then Tuesdays, I have 3 classes and then I have my study hall. And so I really like the block schedule too, and learning how to manage time with that, where the homework you get one night isn't due for 2 days. And so learning how to work with that has been really great. And I think that'll prepare us well for college too, because that's a little more similar than having like all classes every single day.
All right. Okay, here's another question. How has being a faculty member at St. Ambrose focused on student achievement and development affected your teaching? How you see your profession, and what part of St. Ambrose you would like every student in Madison area to have in their education? Okay, so what do we want every student in the Madison area to have in their education? I'm going to try and sum that awesome question up. Any thoughts on that anyone wants to take a stab at it? Michael, do you want to take a stab at it? Mr. Quas?
Sure. And again, I suspect that some schools do this, but I would say I would want everybody to spend as much time as we do on certain texts. So instead of just trying to cover this broad swath of content, right, to sort of cover it all, you spend some time getting into just one source. And from that source, you can build out and you can learn about the history of the time. You can learn about things like grammar and syntax and rhetoric. You can learn about the values and the philosophy of the time, and just do a real close reading, and just sort of dig in deeply. That's what I think everybody else should do.
Thank you, Michael. Connie, this is a great question for you. It says, what can I expect my incoming sixth grader to study and have for homework at night as a sixth grader? So what are maybe just, talking about how we approach sixth grade here at St. Ambrose?
Yes, I love sixth grade.
I know you do. I know you do. You love those sixth graders.
One thing that we're very aware of at St. Ambrose Academy is that sixth grade is its own stage of development. If I ran a K through 12 school, it would there'd be a K through 6. And then the next step would be into 7th and 8th grade, because there's a real developmental change between 6th and 7th grade. And so but I like that they're with the other 7th and 8th graders, but we're really aware of that different and precious sort of stage that 6th grade is. They don't start Latin in 6th grade, which means they do have an extra 2 big blocks of study hall every week, where we can do all sorts of other things based upon what that group of 6th graders needs. It looks different every year what that extra time is for them, and it gives them extra time to get to know each other and bond together as a class. In terms of what will they learn in 6th grade, English is really focused on just getting everybody on the same page in terms of language arts with grammar and writing and the mythologies of different cultures. And that connects with the rest of the curriculum. The cycles in the junior high are somewhat similar. It still sort of jives together in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. And they're in the ancient world in 6th grade. But it's really just about setting the building blocks that will launch them for success as they go forward in our St. Ambrose school.
And so what are the expectations for homework? I can tell that that's one of the points in the question. And I want you to talk about that, because we really think about that and how much time they should be spending on homework at night when they're only in 6th grade. And so if you could talk a little bit about that too.
Yeah, absolutely. It varies from child to child, of course, because everyone has a different reading speed and a different writing speed, and even mechanically what they can write is different from child to child. The 6th graders, given the amount of study hall time they have, should be able to finish most of their homework before they go home at the end of the day. And we try to help them in the study hall to focus and, and stick to it and get their work done. So it should not be a large burden of homework in the junior high. And if it is, we want to hear about it and we want to know so that we can make sure they aren't getting crushed at night and they can be with their family.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Let me see here. I think that we have one more. And and this is a really good question for you, Dr. Scamp. Talking about, it says, do you have AP classes in high school? And it would be really great to have you talk about how we have classes that prepare students for taking AP exams, and then our students do take AP exams. So if you could kind of talk about how we approach APs.
Yeah, so we do not offer AP classes. We do, however, prepare students for some of the AP exams. I know currently the advanced chemistry and the biology 2 classes have been designed to prepare the students for those particular AP exams. In the English program, we feel that our English curriculum prepares the students both for the composition, language and composition, and literature and composition exams. I generally recommend students that they wait until their senior year to take them. So they've had their 4 years. They generally score better after 4 years of English. And then we have students who choose to take other AP exams, and we do offer them here and administer them here at St. Ambrose every May, and just in-house, just for our students here. And students have taken all sorts of AP exams. And I know that for the history exams, for example, the students do have to do extra preparation for those exams outside of the history curriculum here. I know that there are students who've done things like the AP Spanish exam because they've had Spanish outside of school. So there's all sorts of possibilities, and we have students who are lots of students who are ambitious and who take time outside of class to prepare for those AP exams, and we're here to support them in doing that.
Thank you very much. Claire, we had somebody that, and I'm going to ask you to share just a little bit. It sounds like we had a little bit of a computer glitch when we asked you about a typical day at St. Ambrose. And I'm just going to answer one of the questions. So what I'd like you to do is just kind of slowly talk about the block schedule that we have again. And one of the questions was, do the classes or do the grades stay together? So Dr. Nielsen, I'm going to come back to you to talk a little bit about how we handle grades, okay? After Claire talks about the block schedule one more time. And then Dr. Nielsen, if you could follow up by talking about how our grades, the grade levels are separated during the course of the day. Okay, thanks, Claire.
Yeah, so our classes are 75 minutes each, and so we have 4 blocks each day. And depending on what grade you're in, you normally take 6 classes, and so you have 3 on one day and then 3 on the next day. And then study halls in the other classes, or music, art, or gym. And then freshman and sophomore year, you take 2 out of those 3, and then junior and senior, you only have to take 1. So the goal is you maybe have more study halls, or maybe you have more time to take another advanced class. But then dealing with homework, your homework that you get one night isn't due for another 2 days afterwards. So that's nice to be able to work on your time management.
Okay, great. Thank you. And then what would you say, Connie, about how we manage grade levels here at St. Ambrose?
Yeah, the students do stick with their grades. For the humanities, they're all together all the time in their group for English, history, and religion. In Latin and math, they do mix up a little bit more because, like Dr. Scamp mentioned, you may come in as a freshman in Latin 1, or you may come in as a freshman in Latin 2. And so the Latin program can be a little bit mixed and diverse, or math, depending upon where you place and what your best tracking is. The science classes, freshman and sophomore year, you're still with your group. But as Claire mentioned, in the upper levels, there are different options for science. So you might, intermingle with the other students, but typically you're with your classmates most of the time.
Claire, can I ask you a question about that? What has it been like for you to travel with the same group of people from freshman to your senior year?
It's been so much fun. Freshman year, I didn't know anyone, and they had all grown up together. So I was a little bit of the outsider, but they were all so welcoming, and we're like a family. They're my brothers and sisters, and I love having class with them. And especially our class is just very, very interested in every class that we take, there's always questions. And my favorite classes are the ones where the teachers take time and they just let us ask our questions, whatever we might have, and we have great discussions. And I really love my class.
We love your class too. We're going to miss all of you. It looks like there's just one more question that we will approach, and I think that I'll ask either Dr. Scamp or Dr. Nielsen to help with this one. And it's talking about, is it hard to transition from public school to St. Ambrose Academy? Is that hard? And maybe, you know what, maybe I'm thinking about it. Maybe, Michael, you're the right person as our Dean of Academic Success to talk about this question. And it might be two of you, but then what would it be like to have a public school sophomore transfer into St. Ambrose Academy? What would need to happen to make that work? So, Michael, do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. And I think, you know, it depends, of course, on the student. I don't think that it would be that difficult. The curriculum is a bit different, but at the same time, the students are, generally speaking, on the same track when it comes to math. They're on the same track when it comes to the sciences. And then, you know, for the most part, the same developmental level. I think if a student is keen on, say, doing things like AP tests and advanced curriculum in high school and in a public school, they'll feel right at home at St. Ambrose. If they're not, if they're just interested in taking, say, maybe your everyday classes, they would also feel right at home at St. Ambrose as well, although the subject matter might be a little, certainly in some instances is different. For example, we devote 4 years to a course that focuses on religion, which there's no real analog in high school. I mean, in the public schools. And then lastly, I think academically, the social situation is a little bit different too. Is that we're much smaller, we're more close knit than it's a little bit harder for a student, I think, just to sort of fade into the crowd, as it were, like say a high school where they might have 1,000 students, right? You will be present at St. Ambrose for sure.
Claire, did you come from public school or private school?
I went to St. John the Baptist in Wanakee from K to 8. So.
Okay, I couldn't remember where you came from. My two alumni children, they both transferred from public school, and they had a really nice transition into St. Ambrose Academy. Dr. Scamp, how do we deal with, as our Dean of Students, how do we deal with a sophomore and credits and transfers at a grade like sophomore year?
Yeah, so we do accept the transfer credits. We take them in and they go on their St. Ambrose transcript, not included in their GPA here, but we are definitely, no one would be behind credit-wise by coming in as a sophomore. We take their credits from public schools, absolutely.
And it looks like we have 2 more questions, and then we will need to wrap up our event for the evening. And Connie, I'm going to ask you to help me with the second part of this question. Is there a waiting list? I will answer that one. Yes, we have a waiting list. You can send us an email at info@ambroseacademy.org or call our school, and I will be very happy to help you get on that waiting list as our Director of Enrollment. And then Connie, the next part of the question is there a cap on enrollment per class? So would you like to talk a little bit about class sizes and that sort of thing?
I would defer to the Director of Enrollment on this.
Okay, all right.
I mean, I would say that we have a goal of keeping our classrooms at a size that is still conducive to our method, that allows us, as we said earlier, to be able to see every child. I like what Mr. Quas said about you can't blend into the background at this school. So we don't want to create a situation where that's possible. At the same time, we want to make it possible for every family that wants to come to St. Ambrose to be able to come to St. Ambrose. So we will find a way to make it work.
And the number that we frequently talk about is about 22. And then, we need to move to, looking at splitting our classes into 2 grades, again, because we definitely want to keep our class sizes very approachable and accessible. A question for you, Connie, is do the religion courses include theology of the body?
Yes and no. I mean, on the one hand, we are very respectful of the fact that theology of the body covers topics that are better addressed by the parents of the child. And we don't want to interfere in that responsibility that the parent has. But at the same time, we do teach what the theology body teaches about the dignity of the human person, the uniquely willed children of God, that we have an anthropology that is comes in 2 forms and only 2 forms, but that each are unique and complementary, but without delving into topics that are better addressed by the parent.
Thank you very much. And then there's just another question that came in, and that had to do with where do you find more information about the courses of study that we have at each grade level? And our website is full of great information about what we teach in each grade level, in junior high and in the high school level, and actually has a nice course listing of what is included in the course listing. Wouldn't you agree, Dr. Nielsen, that there's a lot of really good information about our curriculum on the website?
Yes, our entire course of study for both the junior high and the senior high are on the website. There's also a lot of good information about classical education and our pedagogy.
Well, we are so grateful for all these incredible questions, and I want to thank Patrick and Mary, Claire, Connie, Michael for being here, for all of you to ask questions too. And I also want to invite you to reach out to us. We would love to have you experience our school firsthand. And I'd love to have you reach out to me so we can set up an in-person tour, an in-person visit, so you can really see the nuts and bolts of our school firsthand. You can reach me at info@ambroseacademy.org, and I can set that up for you at any time. In closing, we have a few invitations for you before you go. And first, I let you know about in-person visits and scheduling a shadow day. The second thing that we want to invite you to is to be a part of our musical dinner theater event that is coming up. It's a 2-part event that we want to make you aware of. On March 5th, we've got your lunch or dinner ready to go, and you can enjoy some tasty treats while watching a behind-the-scenes look at our production of Singin' in the Rain, and especially the 3 incredible short films that bring a ton of fun and authenticity to this story of Hollywood filmmaking history. I will actually be a guest on the Backflip Happy Hour podcast, and you'll get to hear more about the process of our filming and what it took to get this incredible production of Singin' in the Rain to the stage with our wonderful Ambrosians. After getting some insight into that process, you'll be able to enjoy even more high quality entertainment as you watch our production either in person on Thursday, March 25th, or via live stream link on a date of your choice later that weekend. Our musicals are a community highlight and you don't want to miss out. And if you've watched this tonight, if you see the show, you're going to see our wonderful Claire Kramer out there tap dancing her heart out. And she's pretty amazing. She's probably got the brightest smile in the entire cast. You'll love watching her in the show. So I invite you to come on out and see us. Lastly, I would like you to mark your calendar for 7 p.m. on March 16th for our next Spotlight Series faculty lecture. This is a series intended to give you a peek into the classroom with English teacher Ms. Katie Behrens. She will be sharing more information about a very interesting topic, fantasy and fairy tales in the faith, right here on Facebook Live. I want to thank you all again from all of us here at St. Ambrose Academy for joining us. We hope you have a very blessed and fruitful Lent. Good night and God bless you.